So we've had the first instalments of Matt Ehret's take on Nikola Tesla, and so far it's been a little bit disappointing in a way, because I was hoping that it'd be a lot more controversial than it has been, because so far nothing that Matt's really been bringing to light is particularly challenging in terms of like Tesla as a scientific genius, let's say. So just going through some of the things that he said so far, we've got Tesla knew fascists. Well, I mean, this was before the Second World War. There was a lot of fascists around. There was a lot of that kind of thing in the air. Tesla mixed in elite circles, and it's, unsurprising that he was mixing with people who had fascist sympathies. I mean, you've got to remember, this was when fascism was an ideology that hadn't yet been put into practice. I mean, we hadn't had the Holocaust or any of the things that we've got in retrospect, where we can see what a terrible idea it was without question. Back in that day, it was just possibly seen as an interesting idea. Same thing goes for eugenics. I mean, Tesla was a man of his time. Eugenics was a very popular idea in America at the time. Hitler took a lot of his thinking from the Americans. So, again, Tesla's mixing with people in the elite. It's a very popular idea at the time. It's unsurprising to find that he's picked up some of the ideas of eugenics. It's a bit like now, you can find people who believe in man-made climate change. Does that make them, is that like in the future, does that mean that everyone who believed in man-made climate change now was an out-and-out anti-humanist, or were they just coming under the influence of the ideas of their time and still doing some good? You can't condemn someone. If I condemned everyone who believes in man-made climate change, I would have no friends whatsoever, because everyone does. So it's not really it's all circumstantial stuff that we've had so far. There's been no direct stuff on Tesla at all so far. It's all been people that he knew. And, elsewhere Matt says something about, there's no single text that you can buy that would give you all this information that he's deriving on Tesla. You have to kind of triangulate it using Leibniz's method and stuff like that. But you don't really have to try as to whether Tesla was a genius or not. But you don't really have to triangulate to know whether Tesla was a genius or not, any more than you have to triangulate anything to know if Dostoevsky was a genius or not. You don't have to look at who they had dinner with, who they mixed with, who they went to school with, or whatever else. You just read their books and decide for yourself, is this the work of a genius or not? In Tesla's case, you need to read his patents. I mean, most people who are a lot more clever than I am, who can understand this sort of thing, read his patents and say, oh, yep, this is definitely the work of a genius. I mean, I don't really like the word genius, but it applies to some people, I think, when their ingenuity is beyond anything that we can really account for, just in terms of hard work. They just had some innate ability to be good in whatever field it is. So anyway, the other things that Matt said is things like, Tesla had a fondness for a pigeon. Well, he's a lonely guy. He hasn't had normal human relations for his entire life. You've got to let him have a little bit of comfort in his life, little pigeon, feeding it little crumbs, I mean, there's hardly a grounds for doubting the man, And then you've got Tesla had opinions outside his area of expertise. Well, name me a single scientist today that doesn't, or an artist, or anyone who gets famous seems to think they can pronounce on all kinds of things. It doesn't necessarily mean they're wrong in their area of expertise, or there's something wrong with their actual science itself. I mean, there might be something wrong with their science itself, but you can't take from the fact that they've taught politics or something when they're a scientist as grounds for doubting their science. They may very well be very good in their field. You don't really know. Tesla believed that he was contacted by aliens, which fits into Matt's sort of thing about the alien thing being a psyop type thing. Well, again, the idea of aliens, very much an idea of Tesla's time. He's not an island. He's being influenced by all these things that are coming in around him and trying to get on with his work. There may be some there are some people that think that he might have been picking up on what are known as relic neutrinos, what people call relic neutrinos now. Now, that doesn't mean to say that neutrinos have to be real, but it means that there is something out there in the physical world that electronic equipment can pick up on. And if it's sensitive enough, it will be stuff that can't be accounted for in normal, signals or noise or whatever else, So he might well have devised some contraption that was picking up some signals that he believed were kind of aliens. But, you've got to forgive the man for flights of fancy, Then you got... Tesla believed that humanity was still evolving. Well, I'm not so sure it isn't. How do we know that humanity isn't evolving? Apparently our little toes are gradually disappearing because they're not used enough anymore. There's all sorts of things about us that might be changing. The size of women's hips are sort of gradually shrinking, so then they have trouble bearing children. These seem to be real things. Whether it's social selection or natural selection or what is going on, I don't know. I'm not an expert on evolution, but there are some things that suggest that human beings are still evolving. And I'd imagine our interrelationship with technology will have an effect on the kind of things that we select for. So, when you look for a suitable mate to marry and have kids with, you're looking for certain characteristics, and you're selecting for them, and they're selecting you for characteristics. And it's possible for that to go in a wrong direction, so, in a sense, there is some aspect of selection and kind of even what you might call a form of eugenics going on, where people with wealth and influence are attracted to, say, women that look like they could have kids, whatever. I don't know. It's just but it's not beyond all bounds of possibility that we are still evolving. Tesla was obviously influenced by leading intellectuals of his day. Now, one of the things that comes up is this fascist or Nazi German spy guy. This is obviously, I think, before the Second World War. I'm assuming Ehret or something. So, Ehret's looks to me like a typical example of the kind of romantic modern tradition in poetry. You can the Romantic movement essentially rehabilitated the idea of Satan, because they secularized the idea of religion, and in that secularized idea of religion, you have the idea of Satan as a kind of a force for rebellion and a symbol of human emancipation, according to the kind of romantic sort of view of things. Obviously, that is misguided, I think, but it again, this Ehret character is a poet of his time and kind of following on in the tradition of Baudelaire and his exoticism and all the rest of it, Mallarmé, Rimbaud, Verlaine, all the rest of them. Baudelaire kicked the ball off with his litanies to Satan. It's all very, a glorification of darkness as opposed to daylight, and the whole idea of the artificial being preferable to the natural, and all that kind of stuff. Ehret seems a typical example of that school of, or that kind of branch of poetry. He was part of some group that was all Oscar Wilde and other. It's kind of initiated by sort of people like Oscar Wilde and stuff like that, and some baron. And it was like a sort of little gay club where they'd all kind of write poems about homosexuality before it was legalised. And this Ehret, again, was one of these kind of fascists, so they're two a penny back then. I mean, it'd be really hard to arrange a dinner party where you didn't end up with a fascist turning up, because they were knocking around everywhere. I don't know, that's not to say that some of the fascists were actively, pushing these ideas. Some people might have just been under the influence of them, or fascist curious, as they might be in those days, again, it doesn't seem that outrageous to me. And I think when we get down to the nitty-gritty, I'm anticipating that one of Matt's main criticisms of Tesla is going to be this idea that he didn't really write down a kind of a logical train of thought as to how he came up with these inventions. He just had these whoa moments, where he just have a dream, or you're out for a walk and suddenly have this moment of inspiration. But you've got to remember that's probably 90% of artists that work like that, and Tesla, his relationship with his materials was very close to that of an artist, in my view. He didn't so much come up with a theory and then put it into the test of an experiment. It was more like he'd be working with his materials, noticing things that were happening, adjusting his thinking in relation to that, moving on to the next state of experiment, and going through these cycles of where his thought process was inseparable from his relationship with his materials. In the very same way that an artist, you ask an artist how they came to paint a painting, they can't explain it, because the painting is the explanation. The painting is the thought process. There's no there is obviously to some degree a thought process there. To some degree there is a hypothesis there. The artist is part of an artistic movement. He's trying to emulate other artists of certain kinds. He's trying to maybe consciously move art in a certain direction. But when it comes down to doing a painting, that artist, if he's a good artist, will allow the materials to speak for themselves and follow the line of thought through the materials. I think that's how Tesla worked. So saying that he didn't lay it all out in a nice, neat thought process is to me, in a way, testimony to his honesty, in terms of he's not trying to make out he knew he'd worked it all out in advance and then proved it. He's really just allowing the experiments and the science and the nature to speak for itself, I think. Anyway, that's where I've got to so far. We've had 5 instalments, as far as I know. Maybe there's another one today. But so far, it's all been kind of circumstantial stuff. I was hoping that it would be something really, substantial, like Tesla didn't invent all the things he claims to have invented, or something like that. Maybe that's to come. I mean, it'd be interesting if he does uncover something like that. But so far, it's been a little bit kind of disappointing in a way. Anyway, keep on going though. I mean, hopefully there will be something interesting comes up, but let's see. Okay, cheers.